Do you know what the greatest irony of the spiritual journey is? Most people miss the final awakening just when they think they've finally conquered it for good. That's right. Not before, when you're fighting ego or going through the dark night of the soul. It is later, when they let their guard down thinking that the battle is over. You've probably heard of the dangers of the spiritual ego, the pitfalls of superficial spirituality, the risks of stopping meditating altogether. But no one warns you about the silent mistake that happens after waking up, the one that seems so correct and natural that you make it smiling, thinking that you are evolving even more. Here is the truth that goes against everything you have been taught. Reaching the final awakening is only half the journey. The other half, the most insidious, is to keep that awakening. And there is a specific mistake, subtle as slow-acting poison, that 90% of people who have reached the final awakening make in the first 2 years. This mistake can undo 7 years of spiritual evolution in 6 months. It can throw you back into the dense frequency of 3D faster than it took you to get out of it. And the worst? By the time you realize you're making it, you've already lost months or even years of progress. In this video, you will find out exactly what this post-awakening mistake is that no one mentions, why it is so common even among advanced seekers, what are the 5 signs that you are making right now without knowing it, and most importantly, how to correct it before spiritual regression becomes irreversible. If you feel like you've already reached or are close to final awakening, this may be the most important video you'll watch this year. Leave a ray in the comments if you're ready to hear the unvarnished truth about maintaining awakening, even if it challenges everything you believe about getting there. Imagine the scene. After years of diving deep into your spiritual journey, you finally feel like you've made it. The Kundalini has risen. The dark night of the soul is behind us. Those 7 things that bound you have simply ceased to exist. You no longer oscillate between the density of 3D and the lightness of 5D. Now you remain stable, free, awake. It is the final awakening, that moment that so many seek but few achieve. And then, just when you're supposed to be celebrating this monumental achievement, a silent mistake appears so insidious that 90% of people stumble upon it without even realizing it. This post-awakening mistake is not what you imagine. We are not talking about inflated spiritual ego, nor about going back to the old, destructive patterns of your old life. It's not about stopping meditating altogether or falling into gross worldly temptations. It's something much more subtle, much more dangerous, precisely because it seems like the most natural and correct thing in the world when you're doing it. It's like a slow-acting poison that masquerades as spiritual nectar. You drink it thinking you're nurturing your evolution, when in fact you're sabotaging years of deep inner work. If you have reached your final awakening in the last 6 months, a year, or even 2 years ago, pay close attention now, because there is a high chance that you are making this common mistake awakening right now as you read these words. And the worst, the more time that passes without you realizing it, the harder it becomes to reverse the damage. This is the kind of mistake that can undo a decade of spiritual evolution in a matter of weeks, throwing you back into dense frequencies faster than a roller coaster in free fall. Before revealing what this devastating mistake is, it's important that we align what it really means to ultimate awakening, because many people confuse the stages of this journey. The first awakening, the initial one, is when you question the matrix. You realize that there is something beyond the programmed reality that you have been sold since you were a child. It is the moment when you wake up to the collective illusion. The second awakening goes deeper. You begin to see beyond the veil, perceive energies, understand the law of attraction, feel the connection with the universe in a palpable way. But the final awakening? That's another level entirely. The final awakening happens when you stabilize permanently in expanded consciousness. It's no longer that emotional seesaw where you spend 3 days vibrating loudly and then drop into density for a whole week. The 7 things that once controlled you: fear of judgment, desperate need for external validation, toxic comparison with others, attachment to suffering, resistance to the flow of life, identification with the superficial ego, and dependence on external circumstances. Simply stop operating in your consciousness. You have fully integrated the teachings, not just understood intellectually. Usually this happens after 3 to 7 years of truly active spiritual journeying, not that weekend spirituality. And here is the crucial point that no one tells you. It is precisely after this monumental achievement, after the final awakening consolidated, that the most dangerous error appears. Do you know why? Because you finally let your guard down. You think, okay, I've reached the top of the mountain, the hike is over. That spiritual vigilance that you had before, that constant care of your practices and your energy, begins to relax. And it is in this relaxation, in this false sense of mission accomplished, that the silent spiritual regression begins to pull you back without you realizing it. The time has come to reveal this mistake that can destroy everything you have built. You simply stop practicing what led you to the final awakening. It seems too obvious when said like this, but look at how it plays out in real practice. That daily meditation that was sacred and non-negotiable, suddenly it becomes, I don't need to sit formally anymore. I'm already awake all the time. The energetic practices that you did religiously, conscious breathing, chakra cleansing, kundalini work. Now you think, my energy is already naturally high. I don't need these techniques anymore. The deep inner work, that constant dive into shadows and unconscious patterns. I've worked everything I had to work. I'm clean now. What about spiritual studies, books, teachings from masters? I know enough. I don't need to learn anymore. Think with me of a very clear analogy. Imagine an athlete who trains obsessively for years to get to the Olympics. He wakes up at 5 in the morning, follows a strict diet, trains 6 hours a day, works every muscle, every technique, every detail of performance. Finally, he wins the gold medal, the top of the top. And then he thinks, okay, I'm already an Olympic champion. I don't need to train anymore. What happens? In 6 months, that body of an elite athlete becomes an ordinary body. The muscle atrophies because it is not used. Cardiovascular fitness plummets. The technical skills that took years to develop are starting to fade. He remains a former Olympic champion on paper, but physically, he lost everything. Spiritually, it works exactly the same way, only people don't understand it because they can't see the spiritual muscle atrophying. The final awakening is not a destination where you arrive, and that's it. The journey is over. It is a heightened state of consciousness that needs to be maintained through the same practices that got you there. But the mind, especially that subtle ego that still remains, whispers in your ear, you've evolved, you don't need those basic spiritual crutches anymore. It is the most dangerous lie that exists. The naked truth? You evolved precisely because you practiced with discipline. The moment you stop practicing, you stop evolving. And worse, you begin to regress silently, losing the ground you have gained day after day. You may be wondering, if this mistake is so obvious and devastating, why do so many people fall into this trap? The answer lies in the subtle psychology of what happens when you reach the final awakening. You see, when you get to that heightened state of consciousness, there is a genuine, real sense of completeness. It's not your mind's illusion. You've really evolved. You've really transcended dense layers of the gross ego. You're really vibrating at a frequency that most people can't even imagine. This feeling is valid and true. The problem is that precisely in this moment of victory, the subtle ego, not that gross ego that you have already dissolved long ago, begins to operate in an extremely refined and intelligent way. This subtle ego whispers things that sound deeply spiritual. You have transcended the need for formal practices. You are the practice now. Live it naturally with every breath. Sitting meditation is for beginners who still need external structure. And look how fascinating it is that you will even find spiritual masters saying exactly that in books and lectures. So it seems that you are right, that it has really evolved beyond the practices. But it has a gigantic nuance that no one clearly explains. Those masters who truly transcended formal practices spent literally decades, 20, 30, 40 years, practicing obsessively and rigorously first. Ramana Maharshi spent years meditating in a dark cave. Buddha experienced a full decade of extreme austerities before enlightenment. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert in fasting and deep prayer. It was only after this long time of disciplined practice that the practice became a natural state for them. It was not a shortcut, it was the result of years of repetition until it became second nature. But you, with your 3, 5, maybe 7 years of active spiritual journey, it still needs structure, it still needs conscious discipline, it still needs to sit down and meditate formally. The common mistake to awaken is to think that you skipped steps that even the ascended masters skipped. It is to believe that you are in a special category where the rules of maintaining awakening do not apply. And the more intelligent and spiritually sophisticated a person, the easier it is to fall into this subtle trap of the ego disguised as transcendental wisdom. Sign 1. Meditation has become when you feel like it. Remember when your meditation was non-negotiable. Rain or shine, you sat every day at the same time. You entered that deep state of inner silence. It was sacred. It was a top priority in his routine. Now, it became, I meditate when I feel a real need, which in practice means almost never, because you are always naturally present. You rationalize, I don't have to sit formally, I'm meditative all the time, living each moment mindfully. But here's the inconvenient truth. Casual presence in everyday life is not the same thing as a deep, sustained meditative state. It's like comparing basic stretching before walking with a full yoga session. Both are valid, but one goes much deeper than the other. When formal meditation leaves your life, you miss that dive into the deepest layers of consciousness. Sign 2. Stopped studying and learning, you no longer pick up those spiritual books that you once devoured with hunger. He does not watch videos about awakening. He does not seek new teachings or different perspectives. The dominant thought is, I already know everything I need to know, now I just have to live the knowledge. But look at the true masters. They study until the last day of life, always delving into deeper layers of the same teachings. A Buddhist monk with 50 years of practice continues to study the sutras. A yoga master with decades of experience still reads the Vedic texts. Why? Because every time you revisit a teaching in a higher state of consciousness, you extract completely new meanings that were previously invisible. Stopping studying is a clear sign that you think you've already reached the ceiling. And that, my friend, is the beginning of the fall. Sign 3. Spiritual routine is gone. In the old days, you had a structured, sacred morning. You woke up, did your energy practices, meditated, set intentions for the day, maybe a spiritual journal. It was a ritual that anchored you in the right frequency from the beginning of the day. Now, you wake up and go with the flow, which is basically fancy code for, I don't do anything structured at all. You justify it by saying that you are following intuition, being spontaneous, living without rigidity. But without conscious structure, its energy is dispersed. It's like water without a container. It just spreads out without direction, without concentrated power. The spiritual routine is not a prison. It is a track that keeps the train of your consciousness at high speed, without derailing. Sign 4. Justifies everything as divine flow. This is perhaps the most insidious of all signs, because it uses spiritual language to mask basic laziness. Didn't meditate today? The universe is not calling me to this practice today. I am respecting my internal flow. Did you eat badly? Did you fill your body with crap? My body knows exactly what it needs. I trust its wisdom. Have you spent the day procrastinating? Haven't done anything productive? It's divine timing. Things will align when the time is right. Look, the divine flow does exist. It is real, and learning to surf it is part of the final awakening. But there's a brutal difference between genuinely going with the flow and using that idea as a spiritual excuse for every slip, every lack of discipline, every moment of spiritual laziness. When absolutely everything in your life is justified as divine flow, you need to ask yourself, is it really flow or is it escape in disguise? Sign 5. Feels subtle regression but ignores. Deep down, you've noticed some signs. The synchronicities that used to happen on a daily basis now appear less frequently. That crystalline mental clarity you had is no longer so clear. There is a subtle fog that you cannot identify. The inner peace that seemed unshakable now has small cracks, moments where anxiety or irritation leaks through cracks that you thought you had sealed forever. But instead of seeing it as a red alarm indicating that your practices have stopped and you need to resume urgently, you ignore it. He says to himself, it's just a phase of integration. It will soon pass. He rationalizes, even masters have bad days. That's normal. And as you become convinced of these half-truths, the silent spiritual regression keeps happening day after day, subtly pulling you back to frequencies you swore you left behind. Let's talk about the real, concrete progression of what happens when you stop practicing after awakening. In the first 1 or 2 months, nothing obvious appears on the surface. You still feel good, your energy is still relatively high because you are surfing the momentum of years of previous practice. It's like that athlete who stops training. In the first few weeks, he still has the physical conditioning. The muscles are still there, the performance is still good. So you look at yourself and think, see, I was right, I don't really need formal practices. I'm still awake without them. But this is the most dangerous phase because you are being deceived by the positive inertia of your past work. Between the 3rd and 4th month, subtle regressions begin to appear if you pay real attention. Synchronicities that were once constant now happen sporadically. Your intuition, that clear and precise inner voice that guided you, is no longer so sharp. You hesitate more, you doubt more. You need to rationalize decisions that used to flow naturally. The inner peace that seemed solid as rock now has moments of instability, as if small waves managed to rock the boat that was once firmly anchored. You're no longer holding that stable frequency of 5D. Small oscillations, but still oscillations. It is the energetic muscle starting to atrophy due to lack of use. From the 5th month onwards, the drop is too obvious to ignore. You are no longer vibrating at the same high frequency that characterized your final awakening. Those oscillations between density and lightness have come back with a vengeance. You spend days feeling expanded and then fall into dense patterns of thought and emotion. Internal drama that you thought you had transcended reappears. Comparison with others, need for validation, fear of judgment. In the 7th to 12th month, without consistent practices, you look honestly at your conscience and realize much of what you have achieved has been lost. It is neither divine punishment nor negative karma. It is simply spiritual physical inaction. Unmaintained vibrational field destabilizes, unnurtured state of consciousness regresses, as well as unused muscle atrophy. Simple, direct, inevitable. The good news is that you don't have to go back to that almost obsessive intensity of when you were actively seeking the final awakening. You don't have to meditate 3 hours a day, go on monthly silent retreats, or study spiritual texts for hours on end. Maintaining awakening requires less effort than the initial conquest, but it requires something absolutely non-negotiable: consistency. Think of the athlete's analogy again. After he wins the Olympic medal, he no longer needs to train 6 hours a day as before, but he needs to maintain a solid routine so as not to lose conditioning. Spiritually, it is the same. You change from seeking to awaken to maintaining awakening. The effort is less, but the regularity needs to be absolute. Daily, non-negotiable. First, 20 to 30 minutes of formal meditation, not that casual presence throughout the day, but actual sitting, closing your eyes, diving deep. It can be in the morning when you wake up or at night before going to sleep, but it has to happen every single day. Second, 10 minutes of basic energy work. Mindful breathing, pranayama, square breathing, whatever works for you. Rapid chakra clearing, anchoring your energy. Third, a short but intentional moment of gratitude and conscious intention setting for the day. It may only be 5 minutes, but it has to be deliberate, not automatic. These 3 daily practices are the foundation that keeps your vibrational field stable. Weekly, dedicate 1 to 2 hours to deep spiritual study. It can be a book, an online course, videos of teachings that challenge you and expand perspectives. Even after awakening, there are always deeper layers to explore. 1 to 2 hours also for more intense practice, long meditation, deep contemplation, shadow work if necessary, and set aside time for review and integration. Write down insights that came up in the week, process experiences, observe patterns. Monthly, do a 4 to 8 hour personal mini retreat completely alone, in deep silence with no digital distractions, and make brutally honest assessment. Are you maintaining awakening or regressing? Look at the synchronicities, the mental clarity, the inner peace. The indicators don't lie. This is not going back on spiritual achievements. It is intelligent maintenance of the most precious state you have ever attained in this lifetime. We have reached the crucial point that needs to stay crystal clear in your consciousness. Awakening is not something you have as if it were a static achievement hanging on the wall of your spiritual resume. Awakening is something that you do continuously, each day, each moment of conscious choice. It's not a medal that you get and keep in the drawer to show others when convenient. It's living muscle that you exercise every day, which responds to constant use getting stronger or neglect slowly atrophying. Have you reached the final awakening? Congratulations from the heart, sincerely. You have achieved something that millions have been pursuing all their lives without achieving. But understand, now it's not over. Now a new, even more important phase begins. This new phase is about living awake, not just having awakened in the past. And living awake does require the same fundamental practices that brought you here: meditation, energy work, study, deep contemplation. The difference is that now they are no longer heavy effort loaded with resistance. Now they are natural joy. They are home where you feel complete. They are authentic expression of who you really are. The practice becomes pleasurable because you are no longer fighting the gross ego. You are just maintaining the high state you have already achieved. It's like the difference between climbing the mountain, difficult, demanding, and walking on top of it, light, but still requires mindful movement. If you stopped practicing because you thought you arrived and you don't need it anymore, come back today. Not tomorrow after I finish watching this video, not next week when I have more time. Today, right now, at this very moment. As soon as you finish here, sit for 20 minutes in meditation. That alone starts the process of reconnection. Because every day without practice is a day of subtle regression going on behind the scenes of your consciousness. Each day postponed is conquered ground being silently lost. Leave a ray in the comments if you're going to resume your practices today, not tomorrow. And subscribe to this channel because the next videos will teach you exactly what practices to maintain in each post-awakening phase and how to adapt your spiritual routine to permanently sustain this state that has cost you so much to achieve. Then answer me with brutal sincerity. Are you maintaining the practices that brought you to the final awakening, or are you letting them slip through your fingers? Do you still meditate every day with the same reverence as before, or is it now when you can? Has that sacred energy work become optional? Has deep spiritual study been replaced by infinite scrolling on social media? Look into the mirror of your consciousness now and be honest. Are you vibrating at the same frequency as 6 months ago, or has something subtly changed? Because if you felt a tightness in your chest reading these questions, your body already knows the answer before the mind rationalizes. Here is the challenge that will separate those who really want to maintain the awakening from those who only want the comfortable illusion of it. Today, not tomorrow. Today, you will do at least 20 minutes of formal meditation. Go sit down, close your eyes, dive deep into that inner silence you know well. It will reconnect with the practice that brought you here, and tomorrow he will do it again, and the day after tomorrow too, because maintaining awakening is not a one-time event. It is a daily decision to honor the state of consciousness that has been so difficult to achieve. The question isn't whether you have the time, the question is whether you'll choose to lose everything you've achieved or have the humility to keep practicing even though you're already awake. Gertrude, that video is over, but your journey of maintaining awakening is just beginning. Subscribe to this channel now and activate the notification bell because the next content will dive deep into specific post-awakening practices, how to identify spiritual regression before it's too late, and advanced techniques that only make sense after you've already achieved expanded consciousness. The community that's forming here isn't beginners, it's serious seekers who understand that getting to the top of the mountain doesn't mean you can stop hiking. See you in the next video, and remember, final awakening is not the finish line, it is the starting point for a completely new life that requires conscious presence with each breath.